Sencha is the biggest or most known tea, widespread mainstream green tea in Japan. It's around 80%. Then we have around 10% bancha, and then it separates itself just on the other teas, which Hojicha is part of. So Hojicha, as I said before, is a post-process tea. This means after the process of steaming the teas and then drying the leaves, then you can post-process it. For example, post-processing also matcha goes through that, but matcha has a different way. So powdered green tea is just the grinding then of the green tea leaves, and Hojicha, for its example, is actually a post-roasted tea. So what we add on as a farmer when we produce Hojicha is actually an additional roasting process. So this tea roasted for a longer period. When we met, for example, Mr. Isin, who is doing also a cookie Hojicha for us, he normally does way beyond the 100 degrees Celsius, and he around 140 degrees Celsius for 1 hour. He's roasting the tea until it becomes Hojicha. But when we dive a little bit into Hojicha, so what can actually be the base of Hojicha? When we talk about Hojicha, either the tea comes from bancha, either the tea comes from a sencha, or the tea comes from a kukicha. And kukicha is the stem tea or the so-called twig tea. Meanwhile, bancha is more referred to as the common tea or the tea from the later harvest, and sencha, as I explained before, is the best or most known tea. But often, as Hojicha nor bancha are actually needing the first or intense flavor of the first harvest, so often these teas are done either from rests after processing the first harvest, so it's a little bit the derivatives of the tea production, or it is coming from the later harvest and then just changing bancha into Hojicha, or sencha from the second harvest can also be used for that. When we go a little bit in the history of Hojicha, so green tea has had especially its biggest expansion in the Meijin period. So the Emperor Meijin, he was very open to the trade, to open trade, free trade. This was something he actually liked, and this then fueled the Japanese industry, and especially tea industry, and tea became a great product of export when it came also to America, the United States, which was actually one of the main importers of Japanese green tea by the time. And during this time also more and more people started to produce also green tea, and green tea was more and more demanded. And then also this kind of special method of using the leftovers of the tea production or harvests which are not really appreciated by the Japanese tea consumer, then this tea was converted into Hojicha. And Hojicha actually was a nice way also for sellers to just promote green tea, which also gave us nice aroma. So when they roasted the green tea, often directly in their local where they had the tea, then often this gave a beautiful smell and attracted actually consumers to drink or even eat something in where they were selling the teas. And nowadays, when you go to Japan, often when you go into a sushi bar or also in a restaurant, Hojicha is something you can absolutely have for your meal, because it's a very soft and very smooth tea. Often people just enjoy a cup of Hojicha also with their meal, or later in the day, evening, or just before they go to bed. But I go on this a little bit more in detail just now. So when we talk about the roasting, what does it actually do to the tea? So as I explained before, it's a longer post process of around 140 degrees Celsius, being roasted about 1 hour. But it really depends on the farmer. You can lightly roast the tea, then you're more in the Kamairicha section, or you can really roast it completely and then you are in the Hojicha. But even in the Hojicha, every farmer has a little bit his own style. The one I explained just now is now what Mr. Isin told us. Good. So what actually happens with the tea when it is roasted to a hojicha, it is losing its vegetative notes, so a little bit the spinachy tones, grassy tones. So these typical sencha or Japanese green tea notes we know from other teas. Hojicha is a little bit losing that, and this is replaced by a more toasty, a little bit of a roasted flavor or even caramel flavor you can get out of your hojicha. So taste wise, this is a little bit the process. What is the process doing to the notes which you get out of the tea? Then definitely what is also a fact, and this was also why I was saying before, afternoon tea, evening tea, or before going to sleep, the roasting process reduces the caffeine content in the tea. And also what it does, it reduces the bitterness. So there's still bitterness in the tea, so you can still get an astringency out when you brew it too long, but it is much harder. So this tea tends to have a more of a sweeter tones, a little bit wooden roasted toasted tones, and a little bit this caramel side. It also depends here on the type of hojicha you have, and then you're often not getting this astringency. And you can even brew this tea a little bit at a higher temperature. I read you can do it at around 90 degrees Celsius, so nearly 200 degrees Fahrenheit, or in this case here today I will brew it at 80 degrees Celsius or 176 Fahrenheit. Then just a last thing to know about hojicha. When you have this tea, it really depends on you. I like to be in the afternoon or in the evening due to its mildness, due to its softness also, and you can really easily drink it after a meal, during the meal, in the evening, or you just drink it before going to bed. And the main difference is really this reduction of the caffeine content. This tea is also a little bit drier. When we talk about green tea, normally 5% of moisture is in the leaf. Here we talk about 1 to 2%. So this is a little bit the roasting process, what it actually does to the tea. And now I want to go into the tasting of this tea. But before we jump into the tasting, I just wanted to show you the leaves. So, as I said before, some tea leaves can be used and a little bit of stems are mixed in. Here you can see, for example, beautiful stem, which is left over of the tea production, and beautifully roasted and used for this tea, but then you have a lot of tea leaves. You can see that this tea is clearly not coming from a sencha production, so it's from a bancha production, and bancha is finally the tea which is the base for this tea. And I can show you from the same farmer, so Mr. Kawabataen also has a bancha, and this is now the bancha which I'm showing you here. So you can see it's a little bit of a green, dark green, nearly a little bit of a dried grass color, going into a little bit of a darker green, so not this intense, strong, nearly kind of jade, nearly blue. Sometimes the gyokuro can really go nearly a little bit into the dark blue or really dark green color. And here we see that this tea is a typical bancha, bigger leaves, a little bit of a mix of stems and leaves, and in general also a little bit more of a raw tea, as it is not so finely and tightly rolled. And just to compare these two, so you see really here we have this typical brown color, and here we still got this beautiful green color. So this is just to compare it to a bancha. And now let's go into the brewing of this tea. So today I brought my Fukamushi teapot, but you can also use just a normal teapot, a normal Kyushu teapot. And we add these 5 grams, which are coming with the sample, and we're gonna brew it now for 1 minute. If you are brewing it at a hotter temperature, so at 90 degrees, just try to do shorter infusions of around maybe 30 seconds are more than enough. With this one here, with the 80 degrees, I can go up now to 1 minute, I would say. And then we're just gonna pour this tea into the glass and then have a look how this tea looks. The origin of this tea is Shizuoka, so one of the biggest production region of Japan. So there the most green tea are actually produced. And now here we are with the farmer Mr. Kawabataen. He does several teas, so Hojicha is not his only tea he does. As I mentioned before, he has bancha, but he's also a big producer of sencha, all pesticide free. So that's the tea we got from him. We focused here on his Hojicha, which we liked a lot, but you can definitely get also other teas from him. Good. So I would say we have this minute through, and now we're gonna just pour. You can directly see the color clearly coming from the tea leaves is kind of a dark golden, beautiful kind of, how you can say, nearly caramel-like, dark caramel color. So roasted nut color, you could also say. So here we are talking about a complete different color than, for example, when we go with a normal sencha or a fukamushi or even a gyokuro. So let's go into the tasting. First, the leaves. So I get a lot of this kind of roasted flavors, clearly. Get a little bit of sweetness as well. But I get a lot of this kind of typical toast, like when you make your toast at home, this kind of, when it just turns golden, this is a little bit the flavor I get. And I get a little bit of wooden tones. I think this is coming from the stems in the tea, so it's a little bit of a mix. I wouldn't judge it as too sweet, so I'm not expecting a too sweet color, so not too much of this caramel-like colors, caramel-like flavors. So I'll judge this tea, it's kind of in the middle of really dark roasted flavors. There you can even go into chocolate or even coffee flavors. And this one, I guess it's a little bit an in-between, but let's have a sip. So the hotter water challenges me a little bit. So what you can also do is to let it sit a little bit longer, so you don't brew it at a lower temperature, but you just brew it at a hotter temperature, here to 80 degrees Celsius, and then you just let it cool down a little bit. Here with the double watt glasses, it cools down a little bit less, but still I get a lot of kind of a sweet note still. So I get a kind of a sweetened wood, kind of sometimes you can buy in the pharmacy this sweet wood. So this is definitely something I get. It's not kind of young fresh wood, but a little bit more older, a little bit more mature wooden taste. Then I get kind of a nice sweetness going over into a little bit of a caramel note, but I definitely get also this toasted flavor. It's really this toasty flavor that dominates this tea in the end. It's like when you have this golden toast flavor, first bite of your bread, when it's just golden, then this is definitely a note which I'm getting a lot of with this tea. Not too much of the kind of this smoky or even coffee flavors, but this toast flavor, but it's also swinging this kind of sweetness. You get it when you have the white bread and you toast it. You always get a little bit of this sweetness lingering also in your palate, and this I definitely get also with this tea. It seems to be not too strongly roasted, so it's a little bit on the lighter spectrum of a Hojicha, then driving a little bit more this lighter, not too smoky, still toasty flavors, but not too smoky or too dark. So definitely a nice tea, which you can, when you're not looking for a too strong flavor in these darker notes. For example, when we look or when we compare it with the cookie hojicha from Mr. Isinen, where he used the kukicha, so the stems, there you get much more kind of this dark chocolate coffee flavors. Meanwhile, with this one here, a little bit more, nearly, you might say it's kind of this roasted flavor with a touch of honey, so a little bit of a sweeter tone, which I then translate more in this a little bit freshly white bread toasted flavor. That's what I get a lot of with this tea. Good. So you can brew this tea easily 3 times. So hojicha is also a tea which you can brew 3 times, and then after the 3rd time, then this tea will lose in its flavor. So definitely a tea which you can also reuse several times. It's also quite economic. It's quite a cheap tea. So this tea definitely a good idea or a good tea for your afternoon, evening time, or even just with your meal. Good. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope you liked this one, and never forget, leave a comment, ask us any question. We will try to answer them all. Thanks a lot. See you and bye bye.